Okay, I'm here. Let me just figure this out for the video. For some reason, in the live Facebook, what we see is Javi. Is anybody watching through live Facebook? Okay, never mind. I hope it works. I'm not sure how this thing works. Okay.
That's fun.
Are you talking?
Hi there. You got on. Do you hear me?
I
Shoshana?
hear you.
Hi. He's just dealing with the technicalities. He was looking on Facebook.
Okay, but I don't hear him.
He's not saying anything now.
Oh, okay.
Actually, he's muted. He muted himself.
Oh, okay.
He must be doing. How are you? I was just by your studio and it's open. He's there doing something.
Right. He's not letting anyone. He just back.
Wow. How have you been?
Thank God. How are you, sweet?
Hanging in.
Hey, hi.
It says everybody's here. I don't know why nobody's talking.
Hi,
I know I'll to join in now.
Hi, Yochanan. So good to see you.
Likewise.
I can't wait till this is over and we can get back together.
Yeah.
Some of my other meetings are saying, let's keep it this way. This is a lot easier.
No, I like to feel the vibe. Everyone, I miss you.
I miss you all too.
Where's Roshi?
I don't know.
Okay, no, I don't mute my voice.
You don't have to.
I want to.
Well, down at the bottom, if you click or whatever, there's a mute button, just like there's a video button where it says
It went away.
Just move your mouse to it and it'll come back. Oh, you're on your phone.
Yeah.
I don't know, it just comes and goes.
Shoshana, are you able to go to the hotel because you're in the old city?
Yes, I did special hotel.
What
a snooze. Wow.
I have to sell my firstborn to get in. But
Wait, you have to what?
no, I mean, you have to live in you have to take the they take your temperature. Yeah, it's a big deal.
Wow. Is Kever David open?
What?
Is Kever David open? Do you know?
I don't know.
Okay.
I demoed it.
Okay.
Somebody has two things on. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Somebody has two devices on, one on Facebook and one on Zoom. Whoever has that, close one of them.
It might be Dina. Dina was trying to get on Facebook.
Because it's impossible to work this way.
How's your voice? I hope you get better.
I have a lot more hope than you do.
Aw.
Can everybody please check? Because there's terrible feedback here. No? Nobody has two things on? Where this is from?
I see the text, but I want to print it. I can't print it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, this is really annoying. I'm not the only one who's hearing.
I hear some feedback, but it must be worse for you. Dina, are you there? Your mic is off, but are
Okay,
you on
look, I'm
Facebook?
gonna turn everybody off so that maybe this will solve it. Just a second.
Fine.
Okay. Now I can't hear you, which is good. But you can turn yourself back on if you want to. But whoever it was, you can hear me fine, right? If you can just raise your hand, everything. Okay, good. So this is not what I wanted to do because I wanted to connect with my phone, which allows me to speak a lot more softly. If you can't hear me, turn speakers on, or I don't know what to do. It's as good as I can do right now. Okay, so we're going to start chapter 7 today. And you have a little bit of it on the screen. And chapter 7 basically starts with the famous story from the Gemara. The story about Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. The story appears in Sanhedrin on page 98. It's well known, but I think that reading it again is not amiss because probably most of us don't remember all the details. So let's see what happened. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi met Eliyahu at the entrance to the cave of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. So this is very pertinent to our time, right? We're talking about Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer, he met him at the cave, and what he means at the cave is at the cave where he was. There are two caves that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai is associated with. A cave in general is like a state of going back into when a child was a fetus in his mother's womb. The cave is like a womb. The other person who went back into a sort of cave, sort of womb, and saw the world recreated afterwards was Noah. So Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, he went into two caves. The first cave was when he was chased by the Romans. And when he was chased by the Romans, he had to hide for 13 years altogether in the cave. And the tradition is that cave is in the town called Ki'in. Ki'in is a Jewish town. Now it's mostly Druze residents. And there's even a location that's considered to be the place where he was. The other cave is the cave that we go to on Lag BaOmer, the cave where he was buried. And that cave is in Meron. We'll see an interesting play on words here with Meron and Romi. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, you have to know, is one of the last Tanaim. He's one of the last masters, sages of the Mishnah. And after him, it's considered that the sages that come afterwards are already sages of the Talmud. So this story is happening on the cusp, at the edge of when the age of the Mishnah ends and the age of the Talmud begins. And it's a very messianic story. So we know that usually in these states where there's a transition in the world, there's a lot of messianic spirit. So this also came about here by Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi, who feels the transition going on. The transition was, of course, between a state in which the Mishnah, the oral Torah, could still be oral, could still be spoken, it could be transferred from master to student, because there was enough, call it presence of mind by people. They had enough time, they had enough ability to devote what was needed in order to remember things by heart. And we know that after Rabbi Yehuda the prince put down the Mishnah into writing, that age ended. He did it because he saw that people no longer had the presence of mind to be able to memorize the entire Torah, the oral tradition. And so it had to be committed into writing. The Talmud is already entirely a written corpus. So the change didn't happen overnight, but the moment that the Mishnah was committed to writing, it already changed the way that people looked at the oral tradition. They understood that an age had ended. And that's the cut that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi was living on, and the transition between these two states. As we'll see, to be in the womb is always a state of, on the one hand, having the possibility of seeing a new world created, on the other hand, feeling that it's all very conditional, meaning I'm not sure 100% that what's going to come out is really going to be alive and viable. I'm not sure of that. So there's a state of a lack of security, a lack of certainty. There's some doubt in the air about what's going to happen. It's conditional. You're not sure 100%. So for that, that's the image of the cave, as we'll see in a moment. The cave is like somebody coming out of the cave, is like the doubt being decided in one direction or the other. Just like when the child comes out of the womb, it's like there's a decision. It's been decided, yes, there will be life here. But before it comes out of the womb, it's still a question. What exactly is going to happen? Is it going to be life, or God forbid, the opposite? So that tension is apparently needed in order to bring the Mashiach. There's a healthy tension in that you're not 100% sure how this is going to happen and in what way it's going to, because if it was just laid out, if it was certain, for instance, that the moment that a woman gets pregnant, 9 months later, without a shadow of a doubt, a new child will emerge, so there would be some kind of tension missing, and that tension is probably what forms the child himself or herself. That tension is needed for the mother to be able to invest so much of her energy into creating another life form inside her. The same thing is with the Mashiach, that if there's no tension, if there's no doubt about whether we'll be successful or not, so people won't invest what's needed into creating this new reality. Okay. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi met Eliyahu Navi, the prophet, at the entrance to the cave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. He said to Eliyahu, "When is the Mashiach coming?" Okay, so to understand this, there's many different explanations from this. We're not going to get through all of them today. We're going to start with the first one. So the Maharal of Prague explains the way that I think you can almost sense it, and this is the thing that's most logical here, that this whole meeting is not happening in practice. There's no meeting like this because Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi can't meet Eliyahu. When we say that somebody meets Eliyahu, we're talking about some kind of spiritual meeting. So he said everything here is spiritual. There's nothing here that this is all it's all an allegory for something. What is it an allegory for? So the Maharal, following his direction that he usually goes, the explanation is that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is the level of the soul that you can say is a Tana, is already part of the Mishnah. Every person has a level of his soul that's like the Mishnah. And then he meets Eliyahu, which is the level of the soul. And they're talking about the highest level of the soul, the Mashiach. So this is true both internally for each one of us, and it's also true because it was brought in the Talmud, it's also true for the general state of the world, that there is a discussion going on between what the soul of the world knows at the level of the oral tradition. It's what it knows from prophecy. Prophecy is higher than the oral tradition because prophecy is Torah Shebechtav. It's the written Torah. And they're discussing the highest level, which is the Mashiach. The Mashiach here either represents, in the language of the Maharal, he doesn't use Yechida. In the language of the Maharal, he uses worlds. So he says that the Mishnah, which is in Yetzirah, usually Talmud is in Yetzirah, but in this case he says Mishnah is in Yetzirah, is talking to Bina, to the world of creation, which is the prophet, to Eliyahu, and they're discussing the world above them, which is emanation. That's where the Mashiach is. Mashiach is sitting at emanation. Another, if we just build on the Maharal's meditation on this, so it's even to a certain extent easier to say, again, it'd be different than the Maharal, but it's following the same idea that the Mishnah is like Bria, that's like my mindset, my rational mind. My rational mind wants answers. Eliyahu would be my Chokhmah, inspiration. I get inspiration from the level of my soul that's Eliyahu, and we're discussing my Yechida, and we're discussing the highest level of the soul, which is the Mashiach or the Yechida, the singular one. So that's built on the Maharal, and again, the Maharal takes everything out of the literal sense, which obviously this is not a literal story. It's not talking about Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi actually going to the entrance of the cave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and they're seeing Eliyahu. What it means is that he didn't have to actually be there. It could be that in his mind, he's standing on the entrance to the cave of Rashbi. What would this mean? By the way, they were very close in time, but Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi, if I'm not mistaken, Rashbi had already passed away when Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was born. Not sure what the gap is exactly, but Rashbi was one generation before Rabbi Judah the Prince. The author of the Mishnah, the editor, the great editor, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, he was a Talmud at the very end of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's life. Meaning Rabbi Shimon was almost was in his final years when Rebbe, the one who edited the Mishnah, saw him. He saw him as a young student. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi is after Rebbe. So I don't think that Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi could have ever met Rashbi. So really, what is this saying? It's saying that he was learning Zohar. He stood on the entrance of Rashbi's cave is like to learn Zohar. This time of the year, in the Sfiras HaOmer, especially in preparation for Lag BaOmer, is the best time of the year. If you've never learned Zohar, to start learning Zohar. It's the most important medrash after Medrash Rabbah. It's the deepest, and as we'll see, it's the one that's most related to Chassidus, because Rashbi's whole take on life was that you have to be happy all the time. By Rashbi, there's no such thing. You're not allowed to enter into his presence, to enter into his cave, if you have any kind of sorrow. Because for Rashbi, even the base of Migdash that was already destroyed in his time, for him it was never destroyed. It was never a feeling like that. Meaning, in terms of his psyche, he never allowed it to affect him. It never allowed him, Rashbi never allowed anything in this life to affect him. He reminds us a lot of Rav Zusha, who said, God never ever did anything negative to me, because it all has to do with perspective. And perspective is the question of what am I alive for? If I'm alive to serve myself, and certainly there can be things that God did to me that I'm not very happy with, and I feel that I am angry at him, and so on. But if I understand that my entire life is here to serve a certain purpose, and I trust Hashem that whatever circumstances I have in my life are necessary for me to fulfill that purpose, then my whole perspective on what's happening to me is completely different. We'll get to this later, but the whole idea here is a very basic thing, that as we go through life, we're building the light above our heads. There's a light above each person's head. This is what he describes in chapter 35 in the Tanya from the Zohar. And every person, as he goes through life, he's increasing the light that sits above his head. And that's what life is about. It's about building that illuminator, which after the person passes away, that becomes his Gan Eden, that becomes his Garden of Eden. That's where the neshama goes. It goes above to that light that I've been building my whole life. So every time that I do something that's part of my mission in life, that light is increasing. My Gan Eden is growing greater and greater. And actually in Tanya, he devotes a few chapters, 38, 39, and 40, to explain how each mitzvah that we do, how each good thing that we do, each good feeling that we have, where exactly it illuminates in that light above us, and how it affects that light. So Rashbi is where all this originates from, because the name of this book is the Zohar. It means light. And it was even called in the past, before it was called Zohar, it was called the Medrash of Light, because that's what Rashbi built his whole life around, to explain that life is about increasing the light, not just in the world, but at the same time that I'm increasing light in the world, I'm gaining more and more light above myself. And as I go through life, that's the real purpose. That's what life is really about. And if you don't see this, so you can feel that Hashem did negative things to you, because you think that somehow you're not able to act in the world, you're not able to do things. But it's not true. Even when you refrain from doing something because it's not part of what your mission is, that Hashem took away your possibility of doing something, even when that happens, you're still increasing the light above you, because even the prohibitive mitzvot, the prohibitive commandments are still commandments. You're still doing God's will. So in terms of the world, it seems to you like you're not spreading the light that you wanted to spread. But in terms of what your mission in life is, that continues to increase all the time. Okay, so he's standing at the entrance to Rashbi's cave, which is like standing at the entrance to the Zohar. The Zohar is Rashbi's cave. So during his lifetime, Rashbi learned the Zohar from Eliyahu when he was in the cave hiding from the Romans. And when he passed away, the cave that he went into, the cave where he's buried in Meron, where everybody, God willing, will even go to this year. That's probably not going to happen, but it can be miracles also. And the cave in Meron is where he archived the Zohar. It's like the living or the physical embodiment of all of Rashbi's life, all of what he had done to his life, and that's where that light is archived. That's where it's placed. So he was standing there, and he said to Eliyahu, "When is the Mashiach coming?" Like we said, there's messianic tension on this transition from the Mishnah to the Talmud. Eliyahu replied, "Go and ask him. If you want to know where the Mashiach is, you have to get to his state." Maral says you have to elevate to the world of emanation. You have to go up that high. So he asked him, "Where is he?" So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi asks, "So where is he?" And Eliyahu Hanavi responds, "He's at the gateway of Rome." So we're going to have to also later on explain this idea of the gateway of Rome. Here the explanation is very simple. It's like the gateway of any major city. At that time, it wasn't just then, it was from the time of the 2nd century, probably even long before that, because we know that in Torah, whoever's a leper is sent out of the camp, which means literally out of the gates. And outside the gates of every city, you had all the people who were afflicted or all the people who didn't belong. The society used to be very, very harsh. It's not like today that if you were cast away for whatever reason, you had to be outside the walls. And outside the walls, it set all the people who didn't have a house or didn't have land, who were poor, and the afflicted. So he says he's sitting at the gateway of Rome, obviously from the outside. And how will I recognize him, says Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. He says Eliyahu, he sits among the poor, suffering from affliction. And Rashi explains what kind of affliction? Leprosy. As it says in chapter 53 of Isaiah, he is impure because of our sins. That the Mashiach carries the burden of all the sins of Am Yisrael, and he's willing to carry it. He's willing to pray for all of it. He's willing to forgive for all of it. And he carries the burden of our affliction. That's what it says there in Isaiah. Now he says something interesting. So if he's a leper, how can I know which one he is? All the lepers look the same. It's not a very good sign. There's many lepers there. So Eliyahu continues and he tells him a sign. The sign. The lepers remove all their bandages all together. What do? They have bandages on their sores, on their leprosy. So every once in a while they have to remove them. So how did they do this? They had bandages and they would wash them. So whenever they finished washing them, they took off the old ones and they would put on the new ones. How would you do something like this? How would a person do something like this? He says they take them all off at once. Wherever they have a bandage, they take it off. And they take them all off at once. And either they send them now to be washed, and they have new ones to put on right away. But in any case, they take everything off at the same time. But he removes one and returns it. But the Mashiach doesn't do it that way. He takes off one bandage and immediately takes a clean bandage and he wraps it around. Why? Why does he do it that way? Why does he take all the bandages off at once and put them all back on at once? Because the Mashiach, he feels that he might be needed at any moment. He knows that at any moment he might be called to redeem the world. But because he's ready and he's with tension also. So he can't afford to wait until he'll put back all the bandages at the same time. So he only takes one off, because one he can return quickly. This is obviously all a metaphor for something. What are these bandages and what's going on here? You could if you wanted to talk without leprosy, you would just say that a person who needs to change all his clothing, and he doesn't change them all at the same time. He just changes one garment, and he puts the clean garment on right away. He doesn't take everything off and redress himself completely. So that's a mindset that says the Talmud that is first of all because he's ready at any moment to come. And because he wants to be ready at any moment, he can't afford to do something that will take time. So this is a very interesting mindset. It would almost be like saying that I can't plan ahead. There's no time to plan ahead. On the face of it, it sounds like this is a very poor way to live. This is not the way a person should live. A person should be planned ahead and think about what I'm going to do and so on and so forth. So I want to stop here and just explain this because it's very, very important for how people live their lives. There's a famous story from the Rebbe that one time he went with his father-in-law on a very complex mission to the authorities in Tsarist Russia, and something that required a lot of bitachon, a lot of confidence that they could actually do what they wanted to do. And Rebbe saw that his father-in-law, the previous Rebbe, was 100% focused the whole time that they were traveling to fulfill this mission. And he was amazed by it, that he didn't seem to be worried at all that they would fail. He didn't seem to be preoccupied. He was present, completely present. So he asked him, after they had done this successfully, he asked him, how are you able to remain focused the whole time and not let your thoughts wander? And you know that the moment that your thoughts wander, you begin to have fear and doubt yourself and so on and so forth. The Friedrich Rebbe answered something amazing, which is the sign of somebody who's like the Mashiach. He said, I keep my mind on the task at hand. I don't let myself think of anything else. And you have to be very focused to be able to do this. But this is the sign of somebody who, regardless of what he's planned, he might know that there's 10 stages after the stage that he's now in. But nonetheless, his mind is entirely on what he needs to do now. And it doesn't matter what comes afterwards. When I get to what comes afterwards, when I finish this stage, I'll start thinking about what else I need to do afterwards. So for instance, when I'm planning something, I'm only thinking about the planning, not thinking about 10 other things. And when I actually go to do something that I've planned, then I follow the stages 100%. I have to be present in each stage, not thinking, not allowing myself to worry about something else. So that's one way of understanding what it means when Mashiach takes off one bandage and he puts just one bandage back on. There's a task at hand, and that's the only task I want to perform. I don't want to do anything else. I don't want to perform any other tasks in my mind at the same time. This is one of the most critical mind techniques that everybody wants to do anything in life has to master. It's very hard to master this because our mind always wants to wander. And especially when there's something that's complex and difficult, it's like it might be too much for you. You want to think about something else. You don't want to only think about this. And still, you have to keep your mind focused on the task at hand, just on that one task. Finish one, how, but the Mashiach is acting this way, but that Eliyahu is revealing this to the soul, meaning this is an Eva, it's a piece of advice that Eliyahu Navi is telling Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. If you want to get to that level, be able to converse with him, you yourself have to recognize that that's how the Mashiach functions. You won't find a Mashiach scatter-minded. You can't connect to that level of yourself if you're looking for inspiration in the regular sense. Most people think that inspiration is something completely undisciplined. It's something that just happens, happenstance. It just happens. It's not the key to inspiration. The key to inspiration, he says, is focusing. The key to receiving an audience, as it were, to recognizing the Mashiach, even inside me, is to be able to be disciplined and focused in what I'm doing right now. When you're focused on that thing that you need to do right now, that's when you receive the inspiration. But if you're trying to just say, okay, I'll just lie back and whatever happens, that's not good enough. So how do we actually do it in practice? So we've talked about this many times, that you first have to look. Let's say, for instance, you want to draw a painting, but you want it to be inspired, or you're writing a paragraph in a book and you want it to be inspired. You can't get the inspiration if you don't have something in your hand already. The idea is that you, first of all, you focus on what is at hand. Let's say you're writing a paragraph in a book. So you write a paragraph, good or bad, it doesn't matter. You write it, and then you focus on it. And when you know what you wrote, and you understand what you wrote, then you can lay back, you can close your eyes, and then the inspiration will come because of that focus that you already have. The same thing is true with understanding a text. So for instance, when we ask how did these sages, how did they interpret things in such an interesting way and yet remain true? So the key to it is that they, first of all, they knew it by heart. They focused enough on what they had been taught to have it completely in their minds. They could focus on it and bring it up in a moment. That's the stage of the Mishnah. The Mishnah was knowing the oral tradition by heart. By us, this means that anything that I learn now, if I learn it from a text, and I hold up a text, and I read a paragraph, that paragraph, I want to hold it in my head enough, strongly enough so that it's almost like I can repeat it by heart. I have to understand it at that level that I can repeat it by heart. And then, if at that moment I let go, then the inspiration can come in. That's like the Mashiach entering, the Yechida entering into what I already know. Okay, so that's how we can take based on how the Maharal explained all of this, how we can understand everything that was going on here. Okay? So he's teaching him, Mashiach is working in such a way that to be the task at hand, and you have to be entirely focused on it. And don't go to the next task. It's like Javi looking out the window. So you can't be absent-minded. You can't look out the window. You can look out the window once you grab the ideas. It could be you already understood it. And that's the beauty of Zoom, that I can sort of see what people are doing. So it's like I already have captured it and you understand what it means. Now you want to be inspired. In order for the inspiration to really function, really come down into a vessel and not just be scattered all over, you have to prepare the vessel. And the vessel is, like he says here, just one thing at a time. The inspiration is scattered. It's like Today we would use, whoever's familiar with it, you would say it's like the two-slit experiment of light. So when light comes in through two holes at the same time, it doesn't illuminate, rather what it creates is an interference pattern. It doesn't function the way you want it to. So there has to be just one hole. And when there's one hole, there's one task at hand, then the inspiration can really take hold of that one task. Okay. So he says that's the difference between him and other lepers. So from this we understand that all the nations have a Mashiach, but their Mashiachs, they don't get it. They're like the other lepers. They think that what will redeem them is just shooting in all directions at the same time. Something like that. They don't have one task at hand. They can't focus. What would this be a good mashal for, a good metaphor for? That it's only when you understand that God is one can you really bring the inspiration down. That if it's like other nations of the world, so they don't have just one God. Today, Baruch Hashem, a lot of them do. But in the time when Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi was writing this and having this conversation inside himself according to the Maharal, there was not yet a concept of monotheism. So this is, you could say that this is a very big critique of the Roman Empire. As we said, that he's sitting at the gateway of Rome. We talked about this in the past. And Rome, according to many opinions, was, there was a lot of civil unrest in Rome. And one of the main reasons was that they had so many gods. Because they had so many gods, so there were warring factions. Each cult or each god tried to grab power. And really, you have to have only one Hashem, one focus. You can bring everything together in order to bring the blessing of Hashem down. That's the idea behind it. Eventually, Rome did move into a monotheism. We talked about the fact that the sages, especially Rabbi Judah the Prince, he was very much hoping that religion would be Yiddishkeit, that the Romans would adopt Judaism. They were very close to doing it, except that they had a bad taste and there was a lot of bad blood because of what had happened with the Bar Kokhba rebellion. And because of that, in the end, they went with Christianity because it solved their problem. It doesn't matter whether they believed in it or not, but it solved the problem of the many gods. And the moment that they had only one God, or as close as they could come to it at that time, so that solved their problem. So this is another way of reading this story. Rabbi Yeshua came to him. So now the Talmud continues and says that miraculously, it's not clear, it doesn't say that he traveled there. It seems that he came there all at once. So this has to do with the end of the story that we'll see later. But Rabbi Yeshua came to him, essentially to Rome, and he recognized him based on the sign that Eliyahu had given him. And he says, "Shalom upon you, my Rav and teacher." Okay, so he recognized him. It's not because of his travel, but because of how he takes advantage of it off and puts them back on. And he replied, the Mashiach replied to him, "Shalom upon you, Ben Levi, the son of Levi." This is one of the main things that Mashiach has an ability to sense about people, who they are, where they come from. It's like saying that the level of the Mashiach in myself is the level that can recognize me for what I really am and can help me find my calling in life. And can help me find my mission. So it's good to know my Mashiach. So he said to him, if you don't have a Rebbe, you have to find your own Mashiach. You have to somehow get to that level to understand what the essence of your shlichus, what the essence of your calling in life is. So he said to him, Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi asked him, when are you coming? And the Mashiach replied, he answered, today. Mashiach is always coming today. I mean, it was even a little superfluous for him to actually go and talk to him. Because the moment that Eliyahu described it, that the Mashiach was always taking off one bandage and putting it back on, so you immediately understand the Mashiach is ready to come right now. He's not going to wait. He doesn't have a schedule where he says, well, today I'm busy for the next 3 years. I'll only have time. No, he's always ready, so he's always coming today. That's his state of mind. Obviously, he doesn't know more than anybody else, but this is, yesterday I was talking to, actually this morning I was talking to my wife about Hillel's famous statement that if not I am for myself, then who will be for me? And if not now, then when? The now, if not now, then when, is when a person understands what his mission in life is. He has to start right away. You can't wait. It has to be today. You can't. Once you understand what the Mashiach is telling you, understand what your mission is, you have to pursue it right now. You can't even wait 1 hour. If you're waiting 1 hour, as we'll see, it means that you still haven't understood what your mission is. Because the moment you understand, the moment you have a picture, a clear picture in your mind of what you want to attain, then right away that creates will that forces you to start right away. And we'll see this when we get to chapter 8 in the last chapter. The moment a person understands what they want from life, what their purpose is, what they need to achieve, you have to start today. You can't wait a single moment, because waiting even a moment would be to postpone the redemption. And every person has a personal redemption. Every person is building that light above themselves. They can't wait even a single day. If they wait a single day, who knows it? Who knows if I'll get another chance? Certainly this day will be gone. So I have to be like Abraham. Abraham Zaken Baba Yamin. He's always older. He always feels old, not because he's really old. It could be that he's 20 years old. But he feels old in the sense that he already knows the biggest, most important lesson of life, which is that you have to start today. If you don't start today, you lost today. So you have to start right away. Even if every day you start over. It could be that every day you have to start over, because what you did yesterday was simply not what you wanted. It didn't turn out the way you wanted it. So today, he says, this is the Mashiach today. Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi returned to Eliyahu. He went all the way back to, it seems he went all the way back to Rashbi's cave. And Eliyahu asked him, what did he tell you? Apparently, Eliyahu already knows the answer. So Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi said, he lied to me. He answered, but he lied to me because he said today that he did not come. So what kind of a Mashiach is this that he doesn't know when he's supposed to come? So again, he needs the higher level of the soul of Eliyahu here to help him. And Eliyahu says to him, to Rabbi Yeshua, what he said was, today, if you hearken to his voice, this is a verse actually from Psalms. Like I said, it's going to be 45 minutes because I know that my voice simply not going to make it more than that. So we'll have to end here. God willing, if I feel better on Thursday, maybe we'll try to have another 45 minutes until my voice gets better, God willing. So sorry for it being so short, but we have to start today. So whatever we got in, and hope to see you soon. Bye-bye. Everybody can say bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Sorry
Thursday.
again.
Thursday when?
Bye.
I guess in the morning. Let me try to work it out.
Okay.
Refuah Shlema.
Amen. Thank you so much.
Thank you.